Hey, welcome to The Right Side, a show where we explore today's news and topics from an admittedly conservative perspective. I'm Jim Twu, your substitute guest host. You might be wondering what happened to our regular guest host, Chris Pareja, and I like to say that he wanted to see what life was like on the other side, not necessarily as a progressive liberal, but as a guest. And so Chris is joining me today to talk about a project that he has been working on, other than the hours that he slaves away on the show, called Retake California. So, Chris, I would say welcome to the show, but you've been here before.
So I'm not welcome.
Yeah, well, welcome. How do you like the chair?
It feels remarkably similar to the one that you're sitting in.
All right, but
my perspective is different.
Oh, okay. But do you think the camera got your better side this time or the previous time?
It's a 50-50 chance. I don't know.
All right. All right. So for those of us who are not familiar with your Retake California project, what would be your brief description of what the project is?
Well, it's a therapeutic outlet. Is really what it is. It's my frustration manifesting itself. What we've become in California is pretty much a one-party system. And I don't think many people would argue with that, even on the Democrat side of the ticket. But the challenge is, one of the reasons why it's been so easy for the one-party system to kind of take hold in California is that there's no credible opposition. The Republicans haven't really fielded strong candidates. In a lot of cases, to be blunt, there are people who are running for office whose hearts are in the right places, or they're trying to just fill a spot because there's no one running up against the Democrat opposition, so they jump in and they're train wrecks.
Okay.
And we have to stop that.
All right. So then what is your plan to stop that?
Well, the first thing is that there actually has to be some infrastructure in place to train candidates, to get them the right infrastructure, to help them do platform development. And these are a lot of things that you would expect from a political machine if that infrastructure were already in place. For example, if the Republican Party already possessed it, or even if it was a libertarian or whatever party would embrace it in opposition. It just doesn't exist. And so, as entrepreneurial as I tend to be, I see a problem, I want to solve it. So I've begun to put together the infrastructure to do exactly that.
And so that so far, what is the infrastructure that you're talking? What does it entail?
So the first order of business is we have a goal. Of myself and some other people that I'm working with. We've got other former congressional candidates, assembly candidates. We are looking at state senate candidates. We're looking around the Bay Area. This is not a county-specific initiative. And what we're doing is looking to recruit 30 to 50 conservative and liberty-minded candidates in the Bay Area that we can begin to put through a program of introducing them to endorsing bodies, of introducing them to one another, of donors, as well as educating them on the issues and helping them understand the context of the office that they're running in and how it may be impacted by local, state, regional, or even federal policies if they actually are lucky enough to get elected into the office they're seeking.
All right. So, and how long has this project been in existence?
This project was begun in November of last year, where the messaging has begun to be developed for the platform itself. We've also looked at starting to reach out to some of the endorsing bodies and the stakeholders who would have interest, and have begun interviewing candidates and reaching out to candidates who also saw major flaws in the way that they ran their own campaigns and want to help the next breed of citizen politicians get up, get strong, get elected, and get control back over the sanity in the Bay Area.
Okay. So, yeah, I guess here's your more macro question then. Assuming that these candidates do become successful,
yes,
what's the goal?
Well, the goal is if we can get more and more of them into office,
right,
people who will stand up for things like pension reform, who will stand up for property rights, who understand that a lot of the policies that are pushed in the name of helping the poor actually enslave the poor or permanently place them into poverty, then we can make a big difference. But in order to do that, we need a bigger platform. We need a bigger microphone or a megaphone, if you will, to get the message out. And so obviously, if we get some people into these offices, we can affect policy that way. But in the meantime, we're encouraging them to get very active in the issues that are important to them and to speak out now. They can't just wait to get elected to do something. We are activists at heart. We do want to see the rights of others defended, and the best way to do it is get in there and mix it up now. One of the problems with a lot of these candidates that are the train wrecks I described previously is they may run for city council having never been to a city council meeting. They may run for Congress never having been to a town hall meeting of their current congressional representative. We'll use the word term, that term loosely. They may have no understanding whatsoever of the job that they're being asked or that they're requesting to do. And so get on the inside, get to know it before you get there.
Okay. So, well, now you mentioned that this is a one-party state de facto,
yes.
Right? So, looking at the guys on top, how do they do it? How would you observe? How would you describe how they recruit their candidates, develop their candidates?
The ones that are there now?
Yes. Or how does their system work?
So one of the things that Democrats are very good at is when they start to see an election shaping up in a quote-unquote nonpartisan place. So if somebody's running for school board or if they're running for city council and they haven't disclosed a party, those kinds of positions, someone will reach out to them right away. They'll get to know them. In some cases, they'll chase them away. In other cases, they'll say, we can get you all the support you need. We just need to make sure that you're going to support these particular interests. And they start to make introductions, etc. We need to learn from those lessons. We need to understand also that, for example, there's a special election that's coming up in one of the East Bay cities right now. And we're working with some of the candidates to look at where their strengths are, and we'll be potentially supporting one or two of them to make sure that they get as far along in the process as possible. Working within, in this case, the Republican Party, working alongside us to make these things happen. But that's what we're looking at, is how we team up and how we learn from the success of the opposition, how we organize. And this will be a great place to do it because there's less of a spread of focus. We don't have to worry about 30 candidates at one time. We can worry and focus on one and work at our kinks.
All right. So, but why do you think there is a discrepancy between the two parties? Why does one side appear to have this organization, this structure that allows them to develop and recruit candidates, where, you know, your side or our side doesn't seem to have that structure? Why do you think that is?
Well, on the one hand, they have a farm team. And the Democrats have done a very good job at messaging themselves as caring about the poor, caring about the disadvantaged, caring about the environment and everything else. The Republicans, not only at a state level, not only at a regional level, but at a national level, have messaging issues. That's one problem. They haven't produced a cohesive message and a platform, and there's so much disagreement. The other thing is Democrats don't typically openly beat the crap out of each other, to use a technical term.
Okay.
However, the Republican Party at a national level and at a local level is at war with itself. Okay. You've got the quote-unquote moderate wing that some would compare to Democrat light, and then you've got the conservatives that some would compare to cave people.
Okay. All right.
But the and the truth is that it's not necessarily Democrat light, and I know as a conservative I'm not a cave person.
Right.
My handwriting would not dictate that, but you know, there's that.
Help that.
But if you look even at a national level, you've got Karl Rove this week saying that his job is, I mean, or basically their goal is to destroy conservatism within the Republican Party. The Conservative Victory Fund is about overcoming conservatives. And so that becomes kind of interesting to try to build a strong party if it can't even get along with itself.
Well, then, you know, when you talk about the messaging problem, you know, in terms of what conservatives or Republicans have, what would be your approach to breaking the narrative and changing the way people think about conservatives or Republicans? Okay,
well, the first thing is we need to go out and tell people the truth. And we have to have, shall we say, the intestinal fortitude to be willing to speak our mind and actually convey what's happening. You know, and the other thing is I'm not saying stay away from the the conservative issues either, and in some cases even some of the social issues, because people say, you know, fiscally I'm conservative, but socially I'm more liberal. Well, what does that mean? That means that I'm not homophobic and I'm not a Klan member, you know, I get along with everybody,
right,
and I'm tolerant of people whose beliefs are not the same as mine. But that doesn't mean that I hate those people if my preference is that we don't focus. For example, I'm a minority. I don't like affirmative action.
right.
Because of what I think that that does is that reduces the talent pool.
Okay.
In some cases. So people should be qualified to do the role that they're in regardless. I don't care what their blood type, what their pigment tone, none of that matters to me. So looking at those kinds of things, but if we want to focus on things and own things, I mean, there are 3 issues that are important to the citizens across the board right now, and those are jobs, the economy, and education.
Okay.
And so if we look at conservative values, job creation is critical to us. We believe in free markets, and we know that that's the way that you can create jobs. We know that that will also stimulate the economy. We also know that strong education is the only way to get the first 2, because you have to have a qualified workforce. You have to have qualified entrepreneurs who know the basics of getting things done. And if we wanted to own school choice, it's a very conservative premise, and we could own that. It's going to mean taking heat from some of the unions in the public schools, but isn't the best thing for the kids the best education possible? That's what we need to put the focus on.
Well, let's try to address those 3 issues. When you have run for Congress before, right?
Yes.
I don't think you hide that fact, right?
And, I don't hide it. I don't showcase it on the show, but yes, I've run for Congress.
You don't put that on your business card, right?
I do have business cards that say that, yes.
But when you approach somebody who is not a conservative, or you're someone who's either moderate or liberal,
Sure.
and you talk about education, and you give them that what you just told me,
Right.
what do they say back to you?
Well, actually, you know, it's kind of odd for politicians,
Right.
but I try not to lead them into where I'm trying to get them to go. One of the other things that we're not good at is because we know how dirty and corrupt politicians can be, many good people don't run for office.
Right.
And so when they do run for office, they often have this feeling of, I need to be kind of a slime bag and just say whatever people want me to say
Right.
in order to get them to like me.
Right.
What I found was counterintuitive. When you talk to people as humans, and I've said this repeatedly, 70 to 90% of the time, we agree on what the issues are.
Right.
Now, we may have total disagreements on how we will implement the solutions to those issues,
Right.
but the first thing is starting to understand where people are and to reach out to them and find out what's important to them. And in many cases, it'll be nothing that you have any jurisdiction over. But if you start there and come to them and find out what's important to them, then you can feed the talking points in as you need to. But the first step is open communication, and that's one of the things we need to train the candidates to do, is to listen.
Okay. Well, I mean, for a lot of these offices, you know, some of them are relatively small, but others are involve like a large area where a particular candidate isn't going to be able to talk to every single potential voter.
Right.
So you have to have a message that at least will resonate well with the media. Right?
Sure.
And I think you've experienced this yourself. The media, at least in the Bay Area, is not necessarily a friendly audience for.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah. But so the question then would be, when most of the voters' perception of you gets filtered through the media and
Sure.
how they cover you, how then would you and the candidates that you were recruiting, how would you train them to deal with that such that the message or you're trying to convey gets across despite whatever filters the media may put on it?
Well, that's one of the things that's great about Retake CA, because there will be some of us that get slandered and redirected.
Okay.
But if there are 30 to 50 of us saying a similar thing around the Bay Area coherently, then every once in a while we'll get some good pickup.
Okay.
And we'll get some good press here and we'll get some good press there. And what will happen is people will start to see around the Bay Area, hey, there's another lunatic who thinks like me. There's another one who thinks like me. And what's interesting is if you go knocking on doors, we feel like conservatives are the lone people in the neighborhood. But I've literally had the scenario where you knock on one door and you lose 45 minutes of your life because somebody says, you're a conservative and you're running for, and you're on my front step, come in. I've been waiting to meet someone like you for a long time. You go to, so 45 minutes later, you kiss goodbye, you're on the way out, and that's not literal.
Not literal, okay.
We do kiss babies and shake hands, or shake babies and kiss hands, depending on appropriateness, but not kissing all of our constituents, generally. But you go to the next door, and all they care about is going green, legalizing marijuana.
Right.
The next one, they're not legally able to vote.
Right.
And then the next door over, 2 doors down from the one where you lost 45 minutes, you lose another 45 minutes.
Right.
Because they think like you, and they think like the guy 2 doors down. And the 2 doors down didn't know that they both feel the same way.
Okay.
And so, but you go through that, and you start to get recognized, and you start to get a following. But what I found is, even when you talk to somebody that you don't agree with,
right,
and this goes back to what I was starting to say earlier, our inclination would be to tell them what they want to hear. But what I find is they respect you more, even if they disagree with you, if they know where you stand and they look you in the eye and say, this guy's different. He actually cares about what he's doing. And I don't agree with 60% of what he just said,
right,
but that 40%, I could get along with him long enough to vote for him to see if he can make a real change.
Okay, but do you think that formula, will actually get you that person's vote?
I think it does in many cases. I ran as an independent,
right,
so I had no money in comparison to the other guys.
Okay.
No adult supervision.
All right.
No, party behind me or anything else, and I still got about 21% of the vote.
Right.
Against 2 Democrats
Okay.
in a highly Democrat district. And so if we can do things like train them along the way and help them not be train wrecks, help them develop debate skills, help them develop public speaking skills, and help them articulate their passion in a way that's digestible to people outside their body, I think we stand a very strong shot. But we're not naive. If we get 30 to 50 candidates in, and we get 5 or 6 or 8, or God forbid 10 elected on the first round,
right,
that's very successful. And in the meantime, we've also raised the awareness of the things that are important to us.
So the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a step?
Yeah, and somebody willing to get shot at.
Well, shot.
Yeah, not hopefully literally.
Okay, but when you're developing the Retake CA and you're trying to figure out how to train the candidates,
Mm-hmm.
Is there an overarching theme that you can just say, that if you say approach someone who doesn't agree with you, or like a moderate, or
Mm-hmm.
the person that agrees with you 40% of the time disagrees 60% of the time?
Right.
Is there an overwhelming approach? Is there a basic approach that you get that will stop the narrative in terms of how people think of conservatives? They think, well, you can characterize how the stereotype that the media and most non-conservatives perceive conservatives, right?
Yeah.
We don't like women, minorities, right? We're just for the rich. We hate the poor. We hate everybody.
Right.
And we're greedy. We want unrestricted markets.
Right.
Is there a way is there an approach that you can that breaks that narrative, that breaks that
Mm-hmm.
thinking, and gets them to reset their thinking, or at least reboot their thinking?
Well, one of the things that's interesting is that I had a chance to debate Eric Swalwell, who's our new congressman in my district, and Pete Stark, who's the old congressman in my district. And the media actually approached me after the debate, and they said, we knew you were conservative, and we knew that you've had associations with the Tea Party, and we thought you were going to be the crazy right-wing bomb thrower, but you actually have interesting solutions, and you came out as the sane one of the 3 of you. The problem is they've never met a conservative out in the wild before. Oh. And so if we can help them actually articulate interesting ideas that are actually executable, there are ways we can change things. And I find that one of the best ways to do it is through stories. As an example, when I was out talking to people on street corners in San Leandro, collecting signatures, an ambulance driver came up to me, and he was talking about how what my solutions were for healthcare, because Obamacare was in the heat of everything at that point. I said, well, first thing we've got to do is stop using emergency rooms as healthcare clinics and start using healthcare clinics as healthcare clinics, because the emergency rooms are clogged up. It's the most expensive way you can treat someone, and you're taking up space from somebody who has a physical emergency just because someone doesn't have insurance. He says, let's take that a step further. I show up at somebody's house with the ambulance. I know they don't have an emergency. If I could reach into my pocket and pull out a taxi voucher,
right,
send them in a taxi round trip to and from the hospital, between your healthcare clinic and my taxi ride, we can turn a $4,000 to $7,000 day into a $200 to $400 day. Do that a million times across the country, and that'll reduce healthcare costs. You start talking about those kinds of things. I was presenting that to progressives on street corners, and they said, wait a minute, nobody's talking about this kind of stuff. Yeah. But that's what happens when you trust people who actually are delivering services out in the free market to solve the problems by using their experience and skill. Government doesn't have to be the solution to everything.
Yeah. Well, that is a novel concept for most people in the state of California.
Yeah.
But okay, so it looks like we probably have a couple minutes left.
Okay.
So, so do you think you might have events come into your favor? Like there might be some macro event that happens in California that makes voters actually more receptive than they have in the past few years.
Yes, and it's all already in place. This is a perfect year. So people have already started to realize that their paychecks are smaller because the payroll tax holiday is over, and they're starting to realize that 2% does make a difference in your spending power,
There you go.
which is also going to trickle into the economy, and they're going to see jobs dry up. Additionally, around October and November, people are going to start realizing that the free health care comes with fines and that the IRS is going to be enforcing them. And when that does, and when they figure out that they've only got a 30-hour job because 31 hours means that they get health care, and so they've got a part-time job trying to live on a full-time salary, and now there's a big fine that comes out if they don't pay for a $20,000 health care plan for their family, things are going to be in play for a new set of listening ears, I think, in the general population.
Okay, and then briefly, I mean, I think, they say money is the lifeblood of politics.
Yes.
So I assume part of the Retake California will involve how to raise money?
It'll not only how to raise money, but how to leverage. So if we can run people as teams, let's say we've got 3 candidates running in an overlapping area, one brochure with 3 faces on it, one email from 3, or $1 going to 3 candidates at the same time, or 1 volunteer handing out brochures actually maximizes the resources. We get 3 times the efficiency. So we're looking at all levels, and plus we don't have to pay union rates for our printed materials, which brings the cost way down.
There you go, using non-union labor. You're hiring scab labor for your work.
Well, if the labor can do a good job, if the union labor can do a good job and they can do it at a reasonable price, we use them. Otherwise, we do believe in the free market.
There you go. All right, Chris, 22 and a half minutes has gone by so fast. But anyways, thank you for your time. And now, I guess we are ready to hear from a message from our generous underwriter, the Conservative Forum of Silicon Valley.
Say, well, I say I'm a constitutional law attorney. They say, oh, really? What kind of constitutional law attorney? I say, well, I'm the true kind. The kind that believe that the Constitution is what the Constitution says and what it was intended to say. Anything beyond that is tyranny and should not be allowed.
So let's come to this, my friends. You ready for the second American Revolution against a ruling class that simply lectures but does not listen or defend the American people? It is government versus the people. Am I right? Yes. Look at the Electoral College example, right? A leftist popular challenge to states' rights. You think the founders weren't brilliant people? Did they not know what they were doing by carefully calibrating to get the small states and the big states to come together? Why does Wyoming get 2 senators in California? Actually, I'd rather have Wyoming's 2 senators.
And we are back, and we'd like to thank the Conservative Forum for underwriting our show. And in addition to underwriting this show, they have a meeting once every month, the first Tuesday of every month. Is that right, Chris?
Yeah, they meet the first Tuesday of every month at 432 Steerlin Road here in Mountain View.
So who do they have up in the coming months?
Well, tonight, where I plan to be in the next 10 or 15 minutes, Kevin Jackson will be speaking. He's of the Black Sphere fame, and he's written a book called Sexy Brilliance. And what's interesting is he's often on the Brian Sussman and Melanie Morgan show on KSFO every Monday morning. They've never physically met, so Brian Sussman will be there to introduce him.
Oh, that'd be great. So, and then who else do they have in the coming months?
So in March, there's going to be a panel discussion on improving the state of education in California. There will be people such as Gloria Romero and even heads of the California Teachers Union, I believe, will be there. So that'll be an interesting conversation. In April, Dr. David Bobb from Hillsdale College. And in May, one that I'm looking forward to, Bill Whittle of PJTV and Afterburner fame.
Oh, well, that's great. Okay. And in closing, Chris has basically undertaken a very difficult task of winning California back to conservative causes, where we are basically 1 out of every 3 California citizens. Now, it's not the first time a group that considers only 1 out of every 3 people took on an overwhelmingly powerful government in order to win their freedom. But, you know, then they were the founding fathers, and who knows, maybe tomorrow, maybe it'll be Chris Pareja and his merry band of patriots. But until then, remember, every issue has 2 sides. When you take your side, make sure it's the right side. Good night.